The death of God is about the drying up of a horizon of meaning and of a whole form of human life.
Where do we stand in the illusion it makes? What kind of space are we invited into?
The material relations between people become social relations between things. When we look at toasters, corn, and TVs,
we still, to a large extent, live in the interregnum between worlds, if you will, or between paradigms. Not many people in the history of the world have faced that.
Zero Squared is the Zero Books podcast.
Naomi, why don't you introduce yourself to the people here on the Zero Books channel?
All right. Well, I got into politics during the old YouTube atheist thing. When it started merging into the more like reactionary content, I started fading away from that due mostly to how they talked about trans people.
The reason you reached out to me, and so the point that we're getting to here is that you are let's say a trans educator now online, or aiming to be someone who can educate people about transgender issues. Is that a fair way to put it?
I'm a trans woman, and I just find that from seeing the content that's made about trans people, a lot of it is really uneducated and seems to be coming strictly from transphobic sources. They'll have you heard about this book? I think it's called Irreversible Damage by Abigail Shrier, which is...
Yeah, I've heard of the Abigail Shrier book. So actually, that might be a good place to jump off from, to start with Abigail Shrier, because I have not read her book. I don't really have any great desire to read it, but what happened with the book is that it came out, and then there was a campaign to remove it. To get rid of it. And that campaign to remove her book and to cancel it, which also included someone who's associated with the ACLU, not the head of the ACLU, but some sort of person who's working in publicity. I don't know his exact job title, but he was tweeting out how damaging he thought the book was to trans people, which then inspired criticism from Glenn Greenwald on that issue. And overall, Abigail Shrier started to look a little bit like a martyr to a politically correct mob. Rather than her book getting criticized for what was wrong with it, it became about whether or not you thought it should be allowed to be in print at all. It became a free speech issue rather than an issue about what's right for.
I think there's a big issue with free speech under capitalism, because it's really the people who have more money have more power to have their speech heard. And trans voices aren't heard as often as those types of people who just takes control of the discourse and push their propaganda, and it's not a lot of pushback from.
I think it's really tough to say whether or not, who, if you want to count up the dollars behind, let's say a certain kind of trans visibility movement, and the critics of transgender medicine like Abigail Shrier, because you have Vanity Fair running Caitlyn Jenner as Woman of the Year. You have a variety of organizations, both within the medical industry and outside of it, that are advocates for trans rights. And it doesn't look to an outside observer like the difficulty for trans people is that their point of view is underfunded. And also I would question whether or not there really is a trans point of view that has an agenda around free speech. I mean, I think that would be like that's really a separate issue from the transgender rights struggle as to what your view is on free speech. But I'm glad to talk to you about free speech. But at the start, but when I first started talking to you, one of the things I really wanted to let you do is tell your story as a trans woman and explain why correctly being identified by your gender was so important for you, and why you might be sensitive to the kinds of statements that Dave Chappelle might make, or books like this one by Abigail Shrier, and why we need to take your particular position into account in order to understand the issue. So could you tell me about that?
Yeah, I came from like like my family was really like my parents had a very like authoritative punishment based education like system, I guess, like so I never really had like any trust in them, like really. So uh, and I had these feelings right when I was a kid about like wanting to act more feminine and do similar things, but all I ever saw in the media were these really horrible representation, like from like serial killers or like just the jokes all the time, and I never really saw any positive representation when I was a kid of people like me. So I kind of like really internalized these attitudes toward trans people, and I thought that was like a freak or something. Like when I was like in second grade, I started like hitting myself with rocks and stuff like that because I I was just really hating myself and I didn't understand why I had these feelings. And all the people around me were like had these really transphobic views because that's all they saw in culture. Like when I once saw like my friend's mother, like she was casually telling us this story about how she saw a trans woman in the street and she was driving her car and like she pretended that she would like run her over to like scare her. Um, so like she so that she would like run away and like not go back like outside like this. And
Where were you being raised? Where were you?
in Quebec, like I'm French Canadian. Yeah, didn't really have access to a lot of media when I was a kid.
Was it like rural Quebec or something? Then outside of a major city?
It was in suburb, yeah.
I'm just curious as to where those attitudes are most dominant, I guess. Because I think it does matter whether you're in a major metropolitan area or whether you're outside in the sticks as to the kinds of attitudes you encounter.
Yeah, for sure.
So anyway, go on. I didn't mean to stop you.
Yeah. Yeah. So like basically, I really internalized these feelings for a really long time, and like when I started first seeing these trans people on like the atheist side of YouTube, like I really got interested in that because it was like, I mean, really the first time I heard anyone talk about it in like a non-negative way, like um, like even when I was in school, like the people, like the educator, like they were fine with LGBT people, but like they would like there's a lot of prejudice against trans people.
And how old were you when you started to really understand that you were trans, that you were given the wrong gender identity at birth, and that you wanted to live as a woman?
Well, I mean, I had these feelings as a kid, but I didn't understand what was going on with me then. So it took me like a lot, like when I start when I got older and I got access to like when I started being like more independent, I started like figuring things out on my own. And so like when I was around like 18, maybe like I start really thinking I was a trans woman due to my experiences. And even then took me like a few years before I like transitioned, because I was really afraid of like being completely ostracized by people.
And were you ostracized by people during your transition?
I mean, I kind of ostracized myself before, honestly, because out of fear, I was kind of like I wanted to run away from everyone due to fear of like I wouldn't be accepted. So,
Naomi, can I ask you, how old are you now?
now I'm 29. So,
And you transitioned when you were 18. Have you been able to reconnect with people in your family or friends since then? Have you found some acceptance, or how has it been going?
I mean, I don't really talk with my extended family much. I don't know. It kind of makes me like they kind of look at me like I'm a freak of it sometimes. Like seems they don't really get it, and I don't really feel like being around them a lot because of that. Like especially my extended family, which I was never like that close to. Yeah, I mean, I've been like a really isolated person my whole life, pretty much because of this, I think.
So, when you were 18, you started to transition.
I didn't. I started later, but
Oh,
like
really? When did you start?
I was like 24 when I started my transition. So
Were you had around that same time is like when everyone starts to leave home and 18, 19, 20, around then. So you were struggling with your gender identity, and you were leaving home at the same time, and you were ostracizing yourself from your family. Did you try to, were you college bound? Were you looking for work? What kinds of things were you doing, and what did you encounter as you tried to be independent?
I mean, yeah, I mean, I got jobs. I started working, but I mean, when I turned 18, like I got this job at this store basically, and uh, I mean, there was an incident there where trans women came in and to shop around, and like it was kind of the old store like grouped around and like went to talk on in the back store about like a freak, how much of a freak she was, and like they all like left. They all looked at her like when she was doing her shopping. Uh, I mean, I don't know. It's just been like a lot of experience like that. That's really kind of messed my mental health up a lot. And I mean, I feel like the things like Dave Chappelle and this kind of culture, which is just like.
Well, I want to talk about Dave Chappelle, but I really do want to hear, like, one of the reasons that I wanted to talk to you is because you told me you were in a woman's shelter right now, and that if you
Yeah.
didn't have the right, if you weren't given the right identity, that you would be possibly dead. Is one of the things that you told me first off or recently, and I just wanted to kind of hear from you your story of how you tried to overcome some of the prejudice that you faced, and how you made your transition, and how you've been doing, and the kinds of things you face as a trans woman today. And so, like, I want to personalize this, and I don't want to skip over the problems and the oppression that you felt. Like, I want that to be on the table. So tell me a little bit, if you can, if you're comfortable telling me about, like, how it went for you to try to leave home and become your own person, and also face, which is always hard, right? I mean, it was hard for me. And then also, doing that as a trans woman, in a community that there wasn't much acceptance for you there. I mean, I'm hoping that maybe there were small communities of support for you there, but I'm just wondering like what that was like for you and how you dealt with it and how you've ended up in a woman's shelter, really, all of that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, basically, I became homeless. I mean, I moved in with my sorry, with my boyfriend like 8 months ago or something,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, the landlord there. I mean, I was having like some mental health issue. I was having like these crisis and these like suicidal episodes,
Mm-hmm.
which ended up with me being kicked out and like put in the street, like because we shared a kitchen with the landlord in Ontario. Like if apparently if you share a kitchen, they can just kick you out without notice, like instantly. So and I mean I was not like in a very stable mental position. I was really afraid. I was like suicidal, and I thought like I would have nowhere to go. And the only place there is here is like this woman's shelter that I could really like have like like some security around, like because the other place where the other homeless people sleep, like I think there's been like 5 deaths there like since I got here. And I mean I don't think I would have been able to handle it personally, like mentally. Like I don't like I think it would have been too much for me, like for
Mm-hmm.
so that's I mean that's why I don't feel like I would be alive right now if it wasn't for
And the legislation that gives you the right to be housed in a woman's shelter, is that recent legislation that protects your identity? Do you know? I mean, maybe you
uh,
don't know for sure, but
I mean, there's been, I mean, Bill C-16 that's been like given
Mhm.
like that included trans people to protected classes, like the gender identity,
Mhm.
which yeah, it's pretty recent. I mean, there was a lot of backlash online even at the time, like
Yeah, Jordan
Jordan Peterson.
Peterson. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he would have necessarily been someone who wanted to keep people out of women's shelters, but he did oppose the bill overall. And one of the major effects of the bill would be that you have the right to have a place to live when you're in this moment of crisis, right?
yeah. We're protected class now,
Mm-hmm.
where its gender identity was added to sex, to race, and these other protected groups.
Right. And for you, that's really important, especially
Yeah,
right now.
right. I mean, trans people are already facing a lot of discriminations, like even today. So without like when like just giving them like a like making it legal would just make the whole situation a lot worse for trans people.
Right. Yeah. Um, well, I see that. And I wanted that to be out there. And also, if there's any other story or anecdote you want to relate as to like as an example of the kind of discrimination you faced as a trans woman, I'm glad to hear that, because I do think that it's easy for me actually to think about things in this sort of abstract way and maybe not quite academic, but to argue out points of principles. And like we started this conversation talking about free speech, and I have sort of prepared remarks I make about these things, um but I wanted to give you an opportunity to really like let me know and feel what you're going through, because I don't want to skip over that or minimize that at all. So anything else that you might want to say or a story you might want to tell about how you're struggling. Like, I guess one question I would have is how much do you think that your mental health issues have to do with the amount of discrimination that you face?
I would say a lot. Yeah, I would say it's most. I mean, And I mean, feeling unsafe for so long due to like hostile attitudes toward trans people that were like everywhere around me at the time. So, and yeah, I mean, I did experience transphobia at workplace where, uh, I mean, because I mean, I have like some mental health issues too. So like a lot of people are like, they will respect trans women, but if you show that you have like some kind of mental illness, then they start thinking you're like a freak and you don't deserve like rights, or you're not a real woman or something, or and they start treating you worse.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine that if you're facing, let's say, racial discrimination in a society, you might have a small community of people of the same race where you can turn for support, where you feel like you're accepted, even though you're not in the majority, say in the culture. You have a subculture or a minority culture where you're accepted. But if you're an independent, like individual trans woman in society, you don't have that security, that home to turn to.
Yeah, a lot of trans women don't have that at all. From like the trans women I've talked to, a lot of them are stuck into unaccepting relationship with their family. It's, and yeah, I mean, it's just a lot of them have no one really like that they feel like accept them.
Mm-hmm. All right, now you can let me have it about Dave Chappelle. Go ahead. I don't need to talk about the hard stuff for me. I made you talk about the hard stuff for you already. So
it's so fun. She literally took down every single word he wrote in her notebook. Oh,
every word that I wrote, or
that Dave Chappelle wrote in his special in her notebook.
Oh my God! Oh, like the entire act. Okay, here we go.
I took a bunch of notes. But
by the way, you this might be a good point to introduce your boyfriend and see if he can.
Sure.
Next on your screen.
Sure, I can come in.
All right, so you're almost on screen. What's your name?
My name's Josh.
Hi, Josh. So, Josh, I want to tell you a joke that I told people, and I want you guys to tell me how offensive this joke is. All right. Okay. But the last time we spoke before, when it was just testing, I was talking to Naomi for a while, and about a few minutes in, suddenly I'm hearing your voice instead of hers, and you're talking to me for quite a little while. And when the conversation was over, I texted her friend and I said, well, I've learned today that trans women are definitely just women, because like any other woman, they apparently need a man to talk for them. Anyway, you two are a couple, and I want to ask you, I guess, before we go to Chappelle again, I'm just stalling before I get my beating. How have you found dating Naomi to be, and have you faced your own kind of discrimination maybe, or do you get any shit at all for your relationship? I know that's maybe a tough question, and if you don't have to answer it if you don't want to, but
yeah, I kind of want this to be more about Naomi, but
okay.
Yeah, I have encountered some problems dating Naomi, maybe some societal pressure and some personal anxiety about how people would view me for dating Naomi. But I love Naomi, and I don't really care what people think. As much as I really thought I did. There's things to me that were more important. So,
but your mother did. His mother did like have kind of and what did she tell you exactly when you told her we were dating? Like,
she was, well, she kind of like scared me. She like because she kind of woke me up to how kind of people view trans people, and I was like, hey, I'm dating a trans woman, Mom, and my mother has accepted me my whole life and says, no matter what you do, I'll always support you. And when I said I was dating a trans woman, she was scared and she started crying, and she didn't want me to date Naomi anymore because she thought we would encounter problems in life. So, I was a little discouraged there, but there's been other...
she probably isn't entirely wrong, but it's not helpful, huh? But I feel for you. So anything else? I cut you off. Go ahead. Say what you were going to say next. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I'll say, as a cisgendered man dating a trans woman, I would just say we should start having more healthy representation in the media of relationships between men and trans women, just like we're trying to achieve healthy relationships between cis men and cis women. That's that's probably just my piece I'd want to put in.
Okay. All right, now I'm ready to take my medicine. Go ahead, Naomi. Give me what you got here.
Yeah, first, I think the first thing I wrote is that he says to the LGBTQ community that he comes in peace, and then he wants to negotiate the release of the baby, which I'm not sure what consequence he faced exactly, but like his comments were like they were pretty bad. Like they were about if I remember correctly, it was something about how didn't want the gay people with AIDS there at his show or something. Because it was afraid it would spread. Which and from what I understand, like LGBT people in the Black community are already really marginalized, and this kind of attitudes just further spread, help further stigmatize LGBT people, black people, basically.
What did you think about Chappelle's comment that, and I didn't know this before, but the baby had killed a man at a Walmart, killed a black man at a Walmart, and he didn't face cancellation for that? But his comments that made so like you can kill a black man and not face consequences, but if you make an LGBTQ person upset or hurt their feelings, then you get canceled. What did you think about that?
Yeah, comment? I don't think okay, so someone who killed someone isn't really gonna spread bad hurtful ideas, because that's gonna hurt others because they have killed someone. It's more it's more that the issue is more that they're actively spreading hate. And they have a platform for it. But yeah,
okay, so
I don't think.
Okay, so right there, I think this may be where you and I actually have our differences. I don't have any differences with you about the importance of people accepting your identity or your need to be protected from discrimination. But I do, and I think it's a complicated thing, but I do think that, the acceptance, well, I think that there's something to what Chappelle said that we should think about a little more deeply. And I also don't really believe that free speech and expression is the source of discrimination, but rather that it's just an expression of something that's happening on a different level. And so maybe we can come back to that, but I feel as though that it's your story is pretty powerful. So I'm trying to keep it in mind as I express myself here, but I feel as though the kind of discrimination that really matters is structural and is mixed up with other economics and power relationships in society. And it's not simply a matter of people's individual attitudes or them being exposed to the wrong ideas, but the way those ideas play out through structures of power. And that and there's a idea that black people's lives just aren't valued very much. And that's why when a black man is killed in a Walmart, it doesn't cause the same kind of outrage as when somebody says something offensive.
Yeah. What about Well, I don't mean to do mind
No, go
say
ahead.
something
Yeah,
quick.
go ahead.
Well, there's something to be said. Yeah, I think against all violence against people of color.
Mhm.
I think there's part of it is maybe desensitization to like violence. Other maybe it's like I know maybe there's been some scientific research into people just having inherent biases against other races, and us like constantly having to fight those biases and check them and try to do the right thing. So what I'm basically trying to say here with this ramble is like we look at violence against trans people of color, and that gets heavily ignored too. Like even in Dave Chappelle's special, he said we ignore the violence the baby caused against, another black man, which it's like I don't advocate for violence against anyone, but I'm sorry I didn't know this. I just don't know this music community very well.
Yeah,
I
right.
apologize to the man who was the victim of this violence, his family. Yeah. Anyways, trans people of color, he completely ignored them in his.
No, that's he did. Although, okay, well, let's move on. I mean, I think the key point here is the key disagreement that we're going to have is just how we should think about people's individual attitudes and how changes to the culture should be made, whether or not stopping expression like the babies is going to be an effective way to
I mean,
combat homophobia, for instance.
I don't really want to cancel anyone or but these people gotta realize that these attitudes that they have are toxic and they're actively hurting people. I mean, from what you said, about more, it's about the power structures more than people like just talking and saying transphobic things in platforms, but those people are have influence on large groups of people who may end up in position of powers with and gain those those attitudes from this type of media. I'm sure Dave Chappelle has introduced a bunch of people to turfs now, and there's going to be a bunch of people who are going to look it up and think, oh well, the trans people only hate J.K. Rowling because she said gender is a fact or something, which is, I mean, I don't even know what that means exactly. I'm guessing he's equating gender to sex and saying you can't change it. But
do you want to have a discussion about that part of the concert? Because you could tell me what you've written something down about it already. Do you want to go to that part?
Sure. Let me find it somewhere.
There was the part where he said, women are people who give birth. Only women who give birth are women. Something along those lines.
Yeah, I think what he said was that, but she has it written down, so we can just wait and see what she said, what she says, because she's got it, I'm sure.
About Bruce Jenner. Was it after the part about Caitlyn Jenner?
Yeah, it was right after the part about J.K. Rowling and the turf part.
Yeah, which he calls Bruce Jenner and misgender her throughout the thing.
I watched an interview with Caitlyn Jenner recently where she said that when people refer to her, when they're talking about when she was actually first famous as an athlete under the name of Bruce, that she is not upset by referring to Bruce because that's what she went by at that time. But she also did say that she was already even then a woman, that even when she was acting under the name of Bruce, that Bruce was a woman, actually. So it's a complicated thing. But back to he said something about being on Team Turf and J.K. Rowling and gender being a fact. And did you write that part down?
Yeah. I mean, he said, he said we cancel J.K. Rowling, which is, a pretty funny claim, I think, because she's literally a billionaire and she has a huge platform, and she goes around and she threatens from what I can tell, she threatened a few people, to sue a few people for the things they've said, for criticizing her about her transphobia. And she used her money, her huge amount of money, to actually cancel people and prevent free speech. Unless people on Twitter may have been mean to her, but the grand scheme of things don't really have an impact. They're not affecting her livelihood. She's gonna be fine. She's not canceled. She's still really popular.
Right.
But and he said that the only thing she said was that gender is a fact. But that's pretty much
that is not true. He's wrong about what J.K. Rowling has said.
Yeah,
she has said a lot more than that. She is actually a TERF. She wants to exclude trans women from bathrooms, and she seems very concerned about the predatory man who dresses up like a woman to get into women's spaces, and she's filled with, I think, very wrong-headed opinions about trans people. So I would agree that Chappelle got it wrong. I think it's interesting to ask ourselves why he got it wrong, because I do think that there was a poll a couple years back about what people thought about different aspects of our society and how concerned they were, and most people really hated call out culture or cancel culture. They said they absolutely hated it, and they also said they hated hate speech, that they hated both things in equal measure. And so so you have to ask yourself, so how do you handle hate speech that everyone doesn't like, and avoid creating a climate of cancellation or call out or public shaming? But anyway, go on. I want to hear about the part about what he said about gender being a fact, if you have that there.
Yeah, I don't have a lot on this. I have some stuff from what he said after that, which
over here it says he was complaining about how Caitlyn Jenner won Woman of the Year, which is
I think he was saying, if I remember correctly, that some women who were feminist women might have felt annoyed that Caitlyn Jenner had only been a woman for a year, one Woman of the Year that year, after they had spent a lifetime struggling or something along those lines. Which, I think that's, I actually think is a kind of a funny thing to say in the context of a comedy concert. But if you're actually asking it,
I personally, I don't think Caitlyn Jenner should have won Woman of the Year. She's not she's just a wealthy trans woman, and I'm sure it must have been hard for her to do it in the public eye. But
it was a political statement. It was saying Caitlyn Jenner deserves our support, and we need to recognize trans women as women. Yeah. That's what that was for. That was not about her accomplishments. It was about the struggle of trans women.
Yes, it's more just for representation of trans women, I'm guessing. Just
well, can I say something?
Yeah.
Well, maybe we can get back to that. Maybe if the trans movement needed, obviously famous athlete, Caitlyn Jenner. So maybe that was a good thing. I can't speak for, maybe the trans community would have pointed out a better candidate for Woman of the Year if that was the year we were going to try and go for trans acceptance. But, that point you were saying before when Dave Chappelle said he agreed gender is a fact, and when he was saying gender is a fact, what do you think he meant by that, Douglas?
I think he meant that sex was a fact, and he was using gender and sex interchangeably. And I think that and we published a book a while back called Neglected and Misunderstood, Shumalith Firestone. And Shumalith Firestone was a feminist in the 70s, and her perspective was that women's struggle had to do with their biology. The fact that they gave birth to children set them back physically and culturally, she thought. And that means that kept them out of the workplace for longer. It kind of relegated them to the domestic sphere, and it was a trauma to them physically, according to Shumalith Firestone. And she advocated technological solutions for the problems that women faced biologically and therefore also socially. So from that perspective, women who gave birth have a unique set of social problems due to that fact. Now, having said that, like Shumalith Firestone, very brilliant person, also kind of extreme. Like her, what she wanted was artificial wombs and other kinds of interventions to alleviate the pressure and the trauma of childbirth. I've not encountered any contemporary feminist who agrees with her on this. In fact, the women that I've encountered, the cisgendered women that I've encountered, have all said, you guys want to start. I mean, they have very odd reactions to it. It's like, you want to introduce artificial wombs. Well, you won't get laid anymore. It was one thought, one thing that I was told. But I don't think that I don't think Shumalith's position is just because she's a name means that she's right. But I do think it's like there's a logic to the idea that because of the reproductive position that women, cisgendered women have, that they face certain kinds of social problems that men don't, and that trans women
won't face. Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying there aren't like any issues that are unique to cis women. Or
what about cis women who can't?
Yeah,
because I had I'm not going to name names or say the position this person was in, but a middle-aged woman in my life before told me in confidence that she couldn't have children, and that her child was adopted, and she made a wonderful mother and all that. And I'm not making any assumptions on the feminists that disagree with. Sorry, what was this woman's name? What the artificial?
Shumalith Firestone. Yeah.
Okay.
Shumalith Firestone. She came to a tragic end. She had suffered mental problems later in life. I'm not sure why I'm bringing this up right now, but I'm not trying to undermine her, so maybe I should just stop. But the point is that a lot of people think she was brilliant, but not necessarily realistic. But anyhow, go ahead.
I just like to say, I mean, sure. I mean, there are lots of issues that cis women might face that are directly linked to their biology, which is like access to abortion, like and healthcare, and a bunch of things, right? But there's also, I mean, people when people see like a woman in the street and they decide to, oh well, I'm gonna catcall her, or I'm gonna do these things. They're doing it based on gender, right? They're doing it based on their appearance. Which, I mean, there's also a lot of issues that women face that are directly linked to gender, and that trans women will also face.
Yeah, and I would say there are issues that trans women face that you talked about at the beginning of this conversation that cisgendered women don't face.
Yeah,
right?
For sure. Yeah, there's.
So I think one of the things that that for me was powerful about Chappelle's special. I keep wanting to say concert because when I was a kid, there were all these comedy concerts on TV, and they don't call them that now. They're specials, and Jake Flores called me a boomer for calling them concerts, so I'm going to try to not say that. So one of the things that was powerful to me about Chappelle's special was that it was his call for the recognition of common human struggle, and he also, like, towards the end of the special, said he was no longer going to make jokes about trans people until he could be sure that not just trans people, but gay people too were laughing with him, and that they weren't feeling like they were being laughed at, that they were laughing together.
Yeah.
Now, admittedly, he said that after making, I don't untold number. You probably have the count, but many offensive jokes throughout the entire
Yeah.
special. But I do think that for me, having seen it and watched it, and connected to it, I did not walk away or thinking, oh, trans women are not really women, or trans women should be made fun of. But maybe I did think a certain kind of online activist is missing out on the possibility of connecting these struggles along the lines of a common humanity. But and that would be the most critical thing I thought about the LGBTQ community at the end of that special.
Yeah.
Not even all of that community, but anyway.
I mean, I still feel like there's a huge danger that a lot of people will will watch it and then end up having some kind of transphobic views, because the way he talks about us is as if we're dangerous, and he keeps saying that we're gonna attack him or something, or that he's looking for Knuckles and Adam's apple at this shows to Olive Fear or something, and a bunch of comments like these. And I mean, he also completely erased trans people. At some point, when the trans woman who our mother, like when the trans woman whose mother showed him a picture of her, and he had like he called he said he had this like fake reaction to calling her, like she said he said he called her beautiful out of obligation, and he would have called her and like Joe Rogan neck if he if it's
was that
when
he talking about he was talking about a trans woman and not about the lesbian he had punched out earlier in the
that was the trans woman, yeah, like
That's one thing I'd say about the special. There was like 3 scenarios he gave. One about the way he was describing it made it sound like either a gay man or maybe a gender fluid man, like threatened to call the police at him in a bar, like a very.
I think that was just a gay guy. I don't think.
And then there was the. I believe he was talking about a lesbian trans woman trying to defend her, or like.
I think that was just a lesbian, not trans. I mean, from what I remember, it was like that was a lesbian woman who was mad at.
And there was the picture joke, and those are his 3 jokes about LGBT.
And there was before that, there was the white woman who followed him out of the grocery store to his car, who called him a misogynist, and he said it bothered him because he drove and he would driving home. He said it really bothered me because I thought to myself, why do these bitches think I hate women? So
could have just been a BuzzFeed fan.
But anyhow, yeah, I mean, I do think that a lot of these comments or joke or statements are layered with irony. Like when he says that he's not at all kind to the woman who falls into the car in the way he describes her. Go ahead.
I was going, like, where I was going when I talked about this woman is like when she told him stop punching down on my people, his answer was, what do you mean your people, right? Which is, it seems like he's erasing that struggle trans people are facing and minimizing it.
Yeah, the reason he doesn't know about the trans struggle is, remember all the work got what was that German sexologist's name, like Mark Hirschfeld was his name. He was he was one of the first scientists to start doing research into gender identity and people's sexes, and he opened up the first gender confirmation like clinic. And the Nazi Party burned all of his work, and the only reason we know he existed is because Nazis keep bragging about how they completely wiped like trans people in Germany out of existence. So that's one of the reasons Dave Chappelle might not have heard of the struggle of trans people. Not completely not devaluing the struggle of people of color in any way. It's like
I mean, it's not because Black people are facing racism that trans people don't face transphobia, and he seems to frame it as like a white people thing, and like even as a way to gain power over Black people in a way. Like at some point he was like, those white people, they're transitioning to women, and then they're like, oh, call me a woman N-word, like you calling, like as if they're like I just they're doing it as a way to gain power, which is, I mean, a lot of misrepresentation throughout the whole thing, I would say, which frame like trans women in a really bad light. And
yeah, I'd have to agree with that.
I mean that statement where he says he's never been attacking gay people or LGBTQ people. His only problem has always been with white people. And then he says, but now I feel like, I finally got him up against the wall. I'm really getting to him. And they turn to me and says, I'm a girl now. Now you have to treat me different. And so I didn't take that to be like a literal statement about real people or to downplay the trans movement, but more like a confession of how he was feeling as he was facing people who were white, who were trying to claim that. I really do think that Chappelle is not at all comfortable being a Black man who can be bigoted. That I don't think he would accept that he could be bigoted based on his own background. And I think he's wrong about that. Like I think he can be bigoted.
Yeah, of course.
But I also saw again, like I did see him, it wasn't a confession of his guilt, but I did see him working through his feelings about being called a bigot and trying to find a way to connect to people who are different from himself and call for common connection. And and the thing that, and I said this to Jake Flores too, the thing that what I really liked, and this is probably because I'm a novelist and kind of relate to the arts and all, was that people could come together of all different types through comedy, being comedians, more than based on their gender identity or their racial identity or anything else, or nationality, that they were connected first and foremost as comedians.
Right. Yeah, I mean, are we talking about his friend Daphne?
Yeah, I mean, it was not just Daphne, though, because at the end, when he said, don't punch down on my people, I think he was really meaning comedians, not Black people. And then after he said that, he like showed like a slideshow of himself with different comedians of all different types. And so his tribe was the tribe of the comedian, is what he claimed at the end. And I kind of like that.
I think maybe he was just admitting, he was like, oh yeah, I'm totally cool with being like a part of the capitalist ownership class.
Well, I mean, obviously he's cool with that, but I think that could be taken for granted that he's a capitalist scumbag. But all right.
I'm sorry.
No trouble. So, yeah, I mean, I want to say though that one of the, I'm not really changing my position very much.
My girlfriend's phone's about to die. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. Well, then I'll just say one thing real quick, and then we can maybe come. You should come back again, Naomi, and just talk to me about trans issues, and not in a debate format like this or this kind of conversation. You're not changing my mind that much about Chappelle, but what you are changing my mind about is the need to be aware of trans people's struggle and keep that in mind. So, bye, guys. Thanks for watching this Zero Books video. If you enjoyed it, subscribe to this channel and click on the notifications bell so that you'll be alerted whenever we release a new video. You should also consider supporting us on Patreon. Our patrons get access to our Inside Zero Books podcast every week and can get access to the Zero Books Book Club and help us to continue making online content from the left.